Hi, my name is Zoe. Let's get you started on Cricut Design Space. I'm going to talk you through how to get set up and then creating on Cricut Design Space. This workshop will give you the confidence to download the app, navigate your way around it, design a simple project and cut it using your new machine. Let's get you up and running. Your very first job is to download the app onto the device that you would like to use when using Cricut Design Space. The best place to find the app is to go to Cricut.com and then in the top right corner, click on Apps. Once there, click on Download Cricut Design Space. You will need to agree to the Terms and Use and Privacy Policy. The links are there if you want to read further into it. Click on Download. Once the app has been downloaded onto your machine, you need to create a Cricut ID. Essentially, this is just giving your email address and password, and this can be used across all devices. This means that you can use your tablet or your phone or your desktop and use the same Cricut ID across all of them. Once you've filled it in, click on Create Cricut ID to complete the process. Now that you've got the app, follow the prompts to set up your new machine. The app itself takes you through a really comprehensive process with some beginner videos to get you through. You really do feel like your hand is being held throughout this. This is what the homepage on the Cricut Design Space app looks like. Let's take you for a live tour of Cricut Design Space itself. Welcome to the homepage of Cricut Design Space. I'm just going to draw your attention to the left-hand side navigation bar and we'll work our way down here to show you what everything is. So at the moment we are on the Discover icon, and this is what the homepage will look like when you first open it up. You've got some shortcuts at the top which will take you to beginner projects, things that are new this week, how-tos, etc, etc. So you could click on those icons and have a look further. Let's click on beginner projects just to see what's in at the moment. So as you can see under this, there are lots of beginner-friendly projects that you could make. There are cards, iron-on, paper, custom t-shirts, made by beginners, etc, etc. And most of these also have a nice video to get you started as well. This Discover page also has lots of things to inspire you. It's well worth spending the time exploring it and saving projects. So for example, there are some images for me based on things that I've searched for in the past. Projects, again, link to things that I've been searching for previously. New fonts that are available, and then lots of seasonal projects that change throughout the year. As you go further down, you might find projects that are linked to the community. So that's projects made by you and by me, and we've shared them with the community ourselves. Anything you make is kept in your private area, and I'll show you that in a moment. But if you choose to share it with the community, you may appear on the homepage here. Then as we go down, we've got things made by the Cricut employees, organisation, and then at the bottom here, cheat sheets and written guides. These are really good to get you started. The next area to look at on this left-hand navigation panel is My Stuff. This area is where you can find everything that you have created and saved yourself. So it might be that it's just a project that you have created, or it might be that you have bookmarked somebody else's images or somebody else's projects, and this is where you would find them. So bookmarking basically means seeing somebody else's project and then you would click on this ribbon type icon to turn it green. That means you've bookmarked it. When you want to find that again, you would go to My Stuff and look under Bookmarked. If you no longer wish to have that project bookmarked, so this one for example, you would just click on the green icon again and it will be removed. So next time I come into My Stuff, this particular project would disappear. So bookmark it or unbookmark it. When you bookmark, you can also add things to a collection, which basically means a folder of your own. My collections, as you can see, are just down here on the left. Also under My Stuff, you can click on Ready to Make, and these are projects that I have clicked on before to have a look at to see whether or not I'm interested in them. Going back to the navigation bar, I'll click on Discover and it'll take me back home. So we've looked at Discover, we've looked at My Stuff. The next place of interest is Get Started. When you click on this, you will find really good comprehensive videos to talk you through your first projects. They're not very long, they're very clear and comprehensive. These projects under here will all be based on the machine that you have selected when you set up Cricut Design Space. If you need this to change, so for example, the latest machine that I connected to my account was a Maker 3, you can change it up here. So for example, if I'd bought the Cricut Joy, click on Cricut Joy and you will see Cricut Joy related projects instead. Back over on the left, we've then got Cricut Learn. When you click on this one, it will take you to the website. Cricut Learn is now hosted on Cricut's own YouTube channel, and you can find lots of different collections or playlists on Cricut Design Space and on products and machines and tools and so on to inspire you with your making. Make sure you subscribe in order to follow along with their latest videos. Back on the Cricut Home Discover page, we can have a look now at Heat Guide. Again, when you click on the Heat Guide, it will take you to an online website. The Heat Guide is amazing when you are using iron-on vinyl or infusible ink, anything that needs to be applied using heat. So you would select your appropriate machine that you're using. If you have an EasyPress 3, there's actually an app that you can use on a handheld device instead. But if you'd prefer to use this, just refer to EasyPress 2. Essentially, you are choosing what it is you're applying on. So for example, I might be using glitter iron-on. You then tell it what you're applying it to, so maybe 100% cotton, whether or not you've got the pressing mat, and apply. It will then talk you through what temperature you need to set your EasyPress up to and how long do you need to press for. You can switch between the two temperatures depending on which you prefer, and underneath there's lots and lots of help to help you get the best out of your press. The final place to note on this navigation bar is the shop itself. So this link, when you click on it, will take you directly to the Cricut.com shop. You can then search by machines, heat presses, tools and accessories, materials, special bundles they have, and also join Cricut Access, which we'll talk about in slightly more detail in a moment. So underneath you can get a little bit more support if needed, but essentially it is a shopping website. Once you have your own account name, it's worthwhile signing in so that you don't need to keep replicating your payment details when buying. Now that we've familiarised ourselves with the left-hand panel, let's have a look what's across this top navigation bar. The first thing to note is the two tabs at the top. You've got the Home tab and you have the Canvas tab. You can switch between those two whenever you need to. So if you're doing some designing and then you want to look at the heat guide, for example, you could just click on the Home tab, go to your heat guide, and when you're ready, go back to your canvas. Underneath the Home and Canvas tab, you will find the universal search bar, and this is where you can find images, projects, fonts, profiles, inspiration. So for example, if you wanted a project and it was related to dogs, you could type in dogs. You will find that there are over 18,000 images that potentially could help you. There are over 2,000 projects linked to dogs. And also, if you were looking for a community member that had that in his name, there is also one of those. If you were looking for specific community members that you wanted to follow, so for example, if you looked up us at Cricut Inspire, when you scroll down to the bottom of the screen, you would find everyone with a Cricut potential or Inspire in their name, and you can find us here. Once in somebody's bio, you can read a little bit about them. You can find out where they're based potentially, and then have a look at the projects that they've shared. If it's a CAP artist, one of Cricut's contributing artist program members, then you'll see their images that they like to share, and then you can choose to follow that person. If you follow them, you will then potentially get a notification every time they upload a new image or project that you might be interested in. So as you can see at this top right hand side, I have one notification in the last hour, and it might be that it's somebody who's followed something or liked something of yours, or it might be that somebody has shared a new project and that's who you're following, so you'll get to find out that way. You can also find Oriana's images, and she is Oriana Guevara. Scroll down to the bottom. There's our lovely Oriana. I'm already following her, but when you look on her profile, there are lots of inspiring projects to help get you started. Over to the right hand side of that top navigation bar, we've talked about your notifications. You've also got your profile name down here. So when you click on your profile name, you'll be able to access your profile and anything that you've shared with the community. You can see your notifications under there as well, but I'd like to draw your attention to this settings button here. When we click on settings, you will find some key settings that are going to be important for you to make note of at the moment. So under general, which is the first one that pops up, you might want to check that your country is selected correctly, that the language that you are using is also selected correctly to help you. And then you need to think about where you would like to save your work to. So are you saving to the cloud and the computer, or are you happy to just save to the cloud? The cloud is great because it means you can access your projects at any point using any device. In terms of the application experience, I would recommend you stay on live. That means that any issues that have been tried and tested under beta have been sorted out and are ready for everybody else to use. I tend to stay on live, but I do know some of my Cricut friends like to be in beta to try out new things that are being tested. If you have any problem with Cricut Design Space, obviously go to the Cricut forums and you can ask questions to see if anyone else is having that issue. But the main place to go really is here. Click on Report Issue and let Cricut themselves know that you are having that issue. Without you and others reporting it, things don't get solved. Other places within settings to look at is you could go under Machines and have a look. This is where you would go if you wanted to add a new product to your setup, whether you wanted to do an update, whether or not you need to calibrate your machine. So sometimes when people are using print then cut before they start a project, it is worth just calibrating your machine just to make sure that your settings are accurate. At the top here as well, Canvas is a useful one to look at before you get started. So for me, you can see the grid on my Cricut Design Space canvas. I quite like to have those lines. It helps me line things up. You could, however, choose a partial grid. That removes most of the lines and just gives you the ones that are within a certain space. Or you could click to no grid, and I know some of my Cricut friends prefer to have no grid at all. So choose which one you prefer. And then the main point of difference here is whether or not you prefer to measure in inches or whether you prefer to work with centimeters. I prefer metric, therefore I've selected metric, but obviously you would change yours accordingly. For settings, those are the key features you need to know. Obviously you can have a look within the other sections just to familiarize yourself with what's under there. When you're ready to start designing, you're going to follow the green tabs. So either click on the green plus for new project in the top right hand side of the screen, or as before, you could click on canvas. Either way, it will take you to your canvas. On the canvas itself, there are three main areas. We have this left hand side, and down here is all sorts of things that you can add to the canvas. So it might be a pre-existing project, it might be a shape, an image, some text, a phrase that exists already, editable images, anything you would like to upload, or the monogram feature. So these are things that you can add to your canvas. Across the top of the screen, it's greyed out at the moment because there is nothing to edit, but this is your edit bar. and it does very much work a lot like Microsoft Word. So this would be where you would change your font, it might be where you change the size or alignment or the arrangement and things like that. Down this right hand side you will find various actions like grouping, attaching, contouring and things like that. This is your layers panel, and everything you add to the canvas will appear as a layer on this right hand side. Let's create a simple design together. So down the left hand side here we're going to click on shapes. There are lots of free shapes available, and then there are also paid for shapes. So the free ones are at the top, and then if you have the subscription, which is called Cricut Access, again I'll talk about that shortly, those are the shapes available to you if you have Cricut Access. So to keep things simple, I'm just going to choose a heart. As mentioned before, anything that gets added to your canvas creates a new layer on the layers panel over on the right here. You can see the word heart, you can see the shape, and you can see that this is a basic cut. Cricut Design Space has been designed as a cutting machine, so most elements that you add to your canvas will be added as a basic cut. And if you want that to be different, you will need to change that yourself. So here is my heart shape. I can click and drag on my heart and place it wherever I like on my canvas, depending on my design. You can also use the arrow keys on your desktop if using, and that will give you a very slight movement instead. Sometimes this is more helpful when you're trying to be really precise with your movements. Because this layer is selected, you'll see that the edit bar is now live. So under operation, it says basic cut. So it assumes that I am going to cut this heart out of a material. If I click on the down arrow, you will see the other options available to me. Now this is based on my machine being selected up here as a Maker 3. So there are more options here than you would see if you had the Cricut Joy selected, for example. So there are different cut options, different cut blades. There are also different drawing and engraving tools that I could use with my Maker 3. I'm going to leave this on basic cut for now, and we'll talk about how we can edit this further. Up here, everything that gets added to Cricut Design Space tends to be in this dark charcoal grey. If you know that you are designing it and you are using a purple vinyl, for example, I would recommend you change the colour on the screen. It doesn't have to be super accurate, it just gives you an indication as to what your design is going to look like, and this will also help you when it comes to cutting it out, and you'll see why when we reach that step. So far we have added a shape to our screen, we have checked the setting, and we have changed the colour. Now let's have a think about the size. When you click on the image itself, your sizing will pop up, and it's an accurate indication as to exactly how big or how small that is. Now you've got two options with resizing. Around the outer edge of your layer, you will see these 4 white boxes. If you click and drag on one of those boxes, you can resize it by making it bigger, making it smaller. I move that to the center of the screen so that you can see. So click and drag to change the size. Likewise, it may be that you have a very specific size of blank that you're trying to fit this to, in which case you can use the edit bar at the top here. You will see where it says size. So for example, let's say the width of my notepad that I would like to add this to is 15 centimeters. I can type in 15, hit enter, and it will resize it accordingly. Now this is in proportion, so the height of the heart also change size based on that aspect ratio. If however you would like this to be very specific, you can unlock your design if you need to. So you'll see the little padlock in between those two numbers. If you click on that, you could potentially have something much more useful if it's a rectangle, but it might be that it's 15 centimeters wide and only 10 centimeters tall, in which case you can really play with the exact dimensions of your shape. So that was two different ways that you could resize. Use the white boxes on the corners or change the size to a very specific one in this top edit bar. If there's anything you're not sure of or that you don't like, you can undo over here on the top left hand side. I'm going to take myself back to when it was this size. Another thing you can do with your layer is rotate it. So you may have noticed when we were looking for the white boxes in the corner, if I hover out slightly, I will get that curved double-headed arrow instead. So one way to rotate your design is to click and drag that round, and you'll notice the numbers on the top change to the specific degree of rotation you have created. Another way to rotate is click on your image and you'll notice the word rotate on this top edit bar. If you've got something very specific you want to do, so for example I would like that at a 45-degree angle, I can type in 45 and it will change my design accordingly. So that was a quick guide to shapes. Let's undo that, move this to the side, and let's have a look at images and talk about those in more detail. So to the left hand side of your screen again, everything you can add, we're going to click on images and it will take you to this main search page. We're going to stick to the theme of hearts. Type in heart and you will see there are over 20,000 images for hearts. Most of them will be relevant to the word heart. Sometimes it's a slight discrepancy as to whether or not it's useful and you would consider it a heart for your design. Now at the moment you can see that there are green A's on a lot of these top images, and that means that they are free for you to use if you have Cricut Design Access. But what is Cricut Access? You can use Cricut Design Space for free, and indeed I did for about 4 years when I first had my machine. However, since becoming a Cricut Access member, I absolutely love having access to everything on Cricut Design Space, as my designs are no longer restricted. Cricut Design Space is a monthly subscription, so you can either pay per month or you can get money off by subscribing for the whole year. So the perks that you get through being a Cricut Access member is you get unlimited use of over 250,000 images. You've got unlimited use of over 700 fonts. You get 10% off any licensed images. This would be for personal use only, and there are thousands of ready-to-make projects there for you. On top of that, you also get some savings benefits. So you get a £10 discount from Cricut.com every 3 months, and that includes free shipping as well. And you get 10% off Cricut.com purchases, including machines, which potentially can save you up to £50 savings per item. At the time of filming, it was £7.49 per month or £71.88 per year. And to be honest, for the last few years, that hasn't changed. On top of that, there are also some exclusive features that subscribers get. So for example, there's an automatic background remover, and you get priority member care should you need to phone them up. If I were you, I would sign up for the free month when you've got time to play with it and see whether or not it's something that is of value to you. So all of these images are amazing, but not all of them will be relevant to what you want at the time. So when you're scrolling down, have a think about how it would look like within your design. So you might be looking for something more intricate like this one. I'm going to select that one for now. Nothing happens other than a green highlight box goes around it. It does pop up at the bottom here, and it's the best way I can say to recommend choosing images. Select them as you go, and you will soon find out as you scroll down what suits you and what suits your project. There's nothing worse than scrolling down and then realizing that there was something that you preferred further up that you would like to use. If you don't have access and you want to make sure that you're not paying an additional cost, so for example, this heart here, If I didn't have Cricut Access, that would cost me 89p. Now I could use that as many times as I wanted. Once you have purchased an image or a project or a font, that is yours to use as many times as you like. It's the equivalent of going into Hobbycraft, buying a stamp and walking out with it. If, however, this isn't for you, I would highly recommend that you use the filters down the side to narrow down those images. So we could filter for completely free. If we don't have Cricut Access, let's just look at the free hearts. So there are 14 hearts available to us, some of them more scientific than others, but there will always be something there that you can use. Another way I like to filter, if I remove the free for now, have a look at the filters down here. Now I particularly like to use operation type. So it might be that I am looking for cut only images. I don't want something that will draw. So it's narrowed down those 20,000 plus down to 17,000. So a slight reduction. It also might be important for you to think about layers. As a beginner, you might just want to use things with a single layer to start with to keep your life easier. That cuts us down to 12,000 images. And again, there are other sections that you might like to look at. So there's project type, material, and so on. So I'm going to go back up and just choose a free image. And I will go for this lovely one here. And when you're ready, all of the images you have selected are at the bottom here, and if you've changed your mind with some of the designs, you could click on the cross there. Alternatively, you could add them all to your canvas, and once they're there, you've got them for a direct comparison. So you can see they've added these layers to the right hand column here. Just need to click away to deselect all of them, and then I can move them into position so that I can see the difference between them. So it might be that I need to resize them to get them all where I can see them. Once you've got them there, you can then make a direct comparison as to which one you would prefer for your design. If there's an image that you no longer wish to have, you can either select that image. So if I select this heart one, I can either hit the backspace on my desktop, and if you notice in the layers panel over to the right here, that will disappear. Alternatively, I can click on the image, and on the quick actions at the top here, you'll notice there's a little bin shape. You can click on the bin. And another way of choosing the right heart, especially if they're all sat on top of each other and a bit messy and tricky to pick up, you can select from here instead if you would prefer. So sometimes I select on the canvas, but when things are starting to overlap, it's sometimes tricky to pick up the right one, in which case it might be that I select it from over here. So I'm just going to get rid of two of the other hearts and keep this one in place. So we've had a look at shapes, we've had a look at images. Let's have a discussion about fonts. So I'm going to click on the word text, and that will bring up a text box. I'm then going to type in whatever it is that I would like for my project. And you'll notice that the default font is Cricut Sans. So it's not the most inspiring of fonts, however, it is nice and clear and easy to read. In order to change this font, you would then go up to the Edit toolbar. So notice this has greyed out when I haven't selected anything. When I select the word that I'm looking to change, I get these options up on my Edit toolbar. If I click on Cricut Sans, you'll then notice you get a pop-up box. Now, if this covers your word, you can move it around on the screen so that you can see the changes that you make to the word itself. I find that a little bit easier at times. The default setting for Cricut is Cricut Sans, and it also takes you to all the Cricut fonts that are available to you. So again, if it has the green A next to it, it means there is a payment associated with it. So it's either free with your subscription, or you need to pay for that font, but then you can use it as many times as you like. If you scroll up and scroll down, you will see hundreds of fonts under there available to you. Now you could narrow it down to the style type if you're looking for something specific, something contemporary, something a bit more like a typewriter. You could do cursive, for example. Then you can select that shortcut and it will give you ones that are more appropriate to cut down your options. As well as Cricut fonts, you could click on System. Now under System, you will find everything that is on your particular device, be that your phone, your tablet, or your desktop. So under System here, you will notice that I have 306 fonts on my system. It might be that those came with the system itself. Likewise, if I've chosen to download a font from elsewhere and I've installed that font onto my device, I will find that font under System. So that's another important thing to note. If you have downloaded a font from somewhere else, as long as it is installed on your device, you will find it under System. If you've downloaded it while you're in the middle of a project, you are going to have to close Cricut Design Space down, reopen it, and you'll find it under System then. We've talked about bookmarks as well before, but it's really important with fonts because there are so many to choose from. So if you find a font that you particularly like, you would just click on the bookmark icon and you will find that again up in bookmarked. So that essentially is where you'll find your favourite fonts that you like to use on a regular basis. If you've forgotten to bookmark it, but it is a project you've done recently, you might find it under Recent, but try not to rely on that just in case. I'm going to go back to the Cricut fonts. I'm going to remove the word cursive. The other place we need to look at is under this filter section here. So there's two lines with two little dots, and you'll find this a really useful place to narrow down your search as well. So if you don't have Cricut Access, select just free fonts and you'll see what's available to you. Once your font is selected, you would just click on the cross and there you have it. Now the difficulties that some people find with fonts is whether or not it is joined up. So let's talk through that. I'm going to select my fonts, but this time I'm going to use lowercase letters as well to make it more cursive and handwritten. Now this font doesn't lend itself to that particular design, so I'm going to go up to font. This time I will choose a more cursive font. So there are all sorts of beautiful options here. And I'm just going to go for Banana Pumpkin. So I can see on my screen, if I close that window, that these letters are touching and therefore joined together. Now I'm going to change the colour of the font so that you can see a bit more clearly what I mean. So at the moment, this is something you need to be aware of and find out whether or not it is going to make a cohesive sticker for you. At the moment, I can see that there are cut lines between these letters. So if it is a font that is not a Kerned font, then you will find these cut lines. However, there is a slight blip with Cricut Design Space at the moment, and even some Kerned fonts look like they are going to cut. So the way I check is I go to Make. Don't need to save just yet. And you will see that those cut lines have now disappeared. So I know that when this cuts, it will be a nice cut all around the outside without cutting those individual letters. So that's ideally what we're looking for when it's a cursive font. We don't want all of those cut lines between the letters because they're then likely to move out of position. So I'm just going to click on cancel for now to take you back. So just be mindful that sometimes it tells you it is going to cut, but when you go to the make page, it actually isn't. So you just need to be mindful of that. When we're talking about Kerned fonts, you can search for those within the filters as well. So if I go up to this font layer again, under the filters on that top right, you can find Kerned. And Kerned means, is it a script font that joins together when it is cut? So if you want one that definitely doesn't have those cut lines, you can filter it for Kerned fonts only. You'll find that Banana Pumpkin is still under there, but I could have chosen a different one. So let's resize our word Cricut, and we'll put our heart in position. Now it might be that you want to have your image or your shape and your text all in alignment. If that's the case, you need to select both of your layers. There's a couple of ways to do this. So you can either go to the top edit bar and you'll see the word select all. As you can see on our layers panel, those have now both turned green. So that's the quickest way to do it if you don't have much on your screen and you just want to pick up everything that's there. So just click select all. The other way of doing it is you could select one layer, then hold down the Shift key on your desktop and pick up another layer as well. Again, you can see on the layers panel that those have turned green, so you know they're now active, you know you've picked them both up together. The third way of doing it is when you've got a really intricate design, lots and lots of different layers. Sometimes it's easier to pick them up from the layers panel. So I would select one layer, then I would hold down my Shift key on my desktop and select another layer. And it might be that I have another layer down here that I want to select, but I don't want all the layers in between. So the layers panel is a really good place to pick them up when it gets busy. Now that these two layers have been selected, I'm going to go to the Align tool. So up on the edit bar at the top of the screen, you'll see the word Align. When you click on that, it gives you different options. Do you want to align it off to the left, down the center, off to the right? Do you want them to align at the top or at the bottom, or vertically or completely centered? So choose the one that would be suitable for your design and it will align everything for you. So again, it's then time to think about your actual blank and what you are putting this onto. So you can either select the size individually as we've done previously, or it might be that once you have selected those two layers, so I've clicked and dragged over those two layers this time to pick them up, it might be that you think of it as a complete design. So at the moment this is just over 25 centimeters wide and 17 centimeters tall all together. So it could be that you just want to resize it from that section there instead. Let's initially talk mats. Now, depending on what you are cutting, you may or may not need a mat. If you do need a mat, there are different types of mat available so that you can get the best cut possible from your material. So the pink mat is called a fabric grip mat. And as it suggests, this is for fabrics and crepe paper. So all the mats have a protective sheet on them, and each of them have a slightly tacky surface. This tacky sticky surface is where you apply your material. Once it's stuck into position, you then feed it into your machine and your machine will cut the material but not through your actual mat itself. So pink is for fabric. There is also a blue mat. The blue mat is a light grip. Light grip mats are for lightweight materials such as paper, vellum, wrapping paper, and most cardstock. The green mat is a standard grip mat, and it's the one I personally use the most. So this is for medium weight materials such as vinyl, iron-on vinyl, infusible ink, acetate, and glitter cardstock that just needs a little bit of extra tackiness to stay into position. The strongest of the mats is the purple mat, and this is called the strong grip. It's for heavyweight materials such as basswood, felt, leather, aluminium sheets, chipboard, or when you are engraving something. And sometimes, as well as the extra grip of that mat, so this is harder to peel back as well. This is super tacky to keep things in place, but you may also need to tape your design down depending on what it is that you are actually cutting. The final mat in the Cricut family is the card mat. So this is a special mat that is for pre-cut cardstock, and it helps you make your card designs. This particular one is a 2x2 and it's suitable for the Explore and the Maker. There is also a smaller one for the Cricut Joy and Cricut Joy Extra. Here are some of the tools that I use on a regular basis and I could not do without. So I regularly use my guillotine. If not, obviously my failsafe is a pair of scissors, but this is also a game changer. This is the True Control knife. So essentially it is a scalpel, if I take that off carefully. But that can be really useful for just cutting your vinyl down to size so that you're not using up the tackiness on your machine too much. As well as the cutting facilities, obviously your ruler, I use a brayer for every single project. It doesn't matter whether it's cardstock, iron on vinyl. I always give the roll function a go to make sure that my material is adhered to my mat. You are going to need a scraper tool. This one is the XL, but I use my small one quite a lot as well. That is to transfer your design from the carrier sheet onto your blank. This is the scoring tool, which I sometimes use either for card making or for positioning my designs. The weeding tool is an absolute must, so it doesn't matter which end you prefer. I personally prefer the one with the dentist hook, but you can get a straight one or one with an extra evil additional hook onto the side as well. And then the spatula is useful for removing cardstock from your mat. We're going to have a closer look at vinyls because that's what we're about to cut for our design. So there are two possible vinyls that you can use. You have your smart vinyl and you have your regular premium vinyl as well. They'll come in slightly different packaging and you need to pay attention to the word smart more than anything. Smart vinyl comes in a wide roll and the roll is actually the same width as a mat. So smart vinyl can be used without a mat in your machine. So here's one that's been unrolled. You can see that the width of the vinyl is the same width as the mat itself. It also has a really rigid backing. So this backing is replacing the need for a mat to go in the machine. So smart vinyl goes into the machine as is, provided that the top of your vinyl is in a straight line. If you have cut something small from this section here and you want to use this as a matless vinyl, you need to make sure you slice the complete top off because the rollers need to grip this vinyl all across that top edge. The premium vinyl is the standard size Cricut material. So this particular material is narrower than the mat itself, and you would stick it down, remove your protective sheet, and as you can see it's slightly narrower than the mat itself, and that's because this section of the mat is sticky but there is a non-sticky edge all the way round, and that's because it needs to go under the rollers and you don't want it to get stuck. So this vinyl is a lot floppier in comparison and needs to go on a mat. If you have offcuts of a smart vinyl, you can easily use that by sticking it onto the mat. It doesn't need to be used as a smart vinyl as such. So to conclude, smart vinyl you can cut in your machine provided it's a straight edge without the mat. Standard vinyl needs to go on a mat, and in the case of vinyl, I personally would use the green mat. For today's project, I'm going to use smart material for both. However, I'm going to use the red smart material on a roll and therefore can cut it without the mat to show you what smart materials are like. And then I'm going to use an offcut of smart material so that you can see how you would use either your offcuts or the standard vinyl on a green mat. So I'm happy with the size of my heart and the size of my wording. It's now time to cut. So based on the materials that I have, I know that I'm going to cut my heart from red smart vinyl so that you can see what it's like to cut without a mat. And I'm going to cut Cricut from a piece of smart vinyl, but that is an offcut of black. So I changed my design on the screen, partly because it then gives me an overall impression of what it's going to look like, but mainly because at the mats page, this will make my life much easier. The design is done and we're now ready to make. So I'm going to click on the green Make button in this top right corner. We've talked through the differences between smart materials and non-smart materials, so you need to select the appropriate button for you. So it might be that you are using smart materials at the full width and therefore you can cut without the mat. It might be that you are using non-smart materials or an offcut of a smart material like I am today and therefore need the mat. It might be that you're making cards and therefore are using the card mat, or it might be that you're doing it multiple ways. So because I'm showing you the difference between matte and matless, I'm going to click multiple ways, but you would select the one appropriate for you and then click on confirm. Based on the fact we've chosen what colour our design is going to be, it places these on the left hand side onto different coloured mats or backgrounds. That doesn't mean that we need that colour mat in order to cut. This is based on the material colour we are cutting. Check your settings when you are at this particular juncture. So it's a basic cut in black with the word Cricut. We are cutting this one on the mat, so I need to make sure I change that to on mat. If you have selected on mat previously, then this will be sorted for you. If I were cutting an iron-on vinyl or an infusible ink, I would need to then mirror my design. This, however, is going to be a sticker on vinyl, therefore I'm leaving that as is. While I am at this stage, I would also check every single colour while I'm in that zone. So this is a basic cut. It is going to be my red heart, and I am cutting this without a mat. So all of those settings are correct. Now have a look here. Even though my heart is only approximately 3 or 4 centimeters big, I need 15 centimeters of smart material. And that's because the machine needs to grip the smart material under the rollers in order to cut accurately. So just bear that in mind when you are potentially using your offcuts. If I am cutting multiple projects, then this is the stage at which I would change it. So say for example, I need 15 of these particular design. I would click on 15, click on apply, and it will automatically populate my mat or my background material with 15 of that same design replicated. This is such a game changer in terms of speed and also in terms of trying to save yourself material so that you're not having to do this at the canvas stage. However, Cricut Design Space puts everything into the top left, and that might not be the best use of your material. So it's not too bad with these hearts, but just bear in mind that if you wanted to, you can physically move them over. Now I can see that I can't quite fit that heart next to this one without it overlapping. But another thing I could try, if I was trying to be careful with my materials, is I could move or rotate some of the design over to make space in that separate section at the end. So I'm rotating, moving across, and that leaves me room for this one here. Now if you imagine if that was several rows, you are potentially saving yourself more material if you need it. The place where it's even more obvious is on this section here. So because I'm cutting this on a mat, Cricut Design Space knows I can only fit 10 of the word Cricut onto that page. So if I want more, I'm going to need to have more material and cut that on a separate mat. We might find, however, that we can fit more of that word into this section down here. So let's have a look. If something has been moved onto a different mat and you would like to move it onto the other one to see, you can click on the three dots, click on Move Object and choose the place where you would like to move it to. I can then move this design to another area on the mat, rotate it and squeeze it into the gap that is there. Therefore, I'm not wasting quite so much of my material down here. So just to go through that again, I'm going to select one of the ones that wouldn't fit originally, click on the three dots, move the object to a different mat. This one was here originally, so that's where you'll find it. That's the only tricky bit. Move and rotate it and slide it into a gap that would fit. So bear that in mind when you are coming to the cut stage. You might be able to move your product around to make more efficient use of your material. So today I only want to cut one, so I'll select one and click apply. And there we have it, one basic cut of Cricut on the mat and one basic cut without the mat for my red heart. When you click on continue, it will connect to your machine. Once you have clicked continue, Cricut Design Space looks for your machine, and once it's found it and connected, it tends to sit on this popular button. Now step number one is to set your base material, and what that means is tell your machine what it is that you are cutting. This is super important to get accurate. Based on the settings that you have put, the Cricut machine will drop the blade into the material as deep as it needs to go in order to give it a kiss cut. A kiss cut is essentially enough for the blade to cut the vinyl, but not the backing sheet as well. If it's cutting cardstock, then obviously you want it to cut all the way through. So you need to be really clear at this stage what it is you're cutting. Now these are the popular materials that are being cut for people using a Maker 3 at the moment. You might also find yours in Bookmarked once you've started to bookmark some of your favourite products. I tend to leave mine on Bookmarked, and anything that I know I've got in my studio that I use regularly, I bookmark it just like I did with images and fonts and shapes. If what you've got is not there, you can click on Browse All Materials. When you go into this, it shows you the materials that are suitable for the machine you have connected. So at the moment mine is on the Maker 3, and it also knows, because over here in this setting I told it that I was cutting without a mat. So it knows that I must be using a smart material, and therefore it's cut down all of my options at this stage here. I've only got these options available to me that are compatible for what I have chosen. If I know the name of it, I can search in here. Alternatively, I could use the categories if I needed to. So I'm going to be searching for vinyl. As it happens, I can see them all down here. And the smart vinyl that I'm using today is a permanent one. Select the material that you would like, bookmark it if it's something that you're going to use regularly, and then select Done. Now, although it's moved on to step number 2, I would like to draw your attention just back to step number 1. It has selected the material for me now, but pressure-wise, I need to think carefully about what I would like here. Now, I only use Cricut materials, and therefore the Cricut machine cuts perfectly for me based on their materials. They have done months, years worth of testing to make sure that their materials cut perfectly based on the settings that you have selected. If, however, your blade is getting slightly blunt, or if you are using a non-Cricut material, You may need to play about slightly with your settings, and the easiest way to do that is to choose pressure and flick between the different ones. So I stick to default because I know that's what my Cricut material will cut well with. However, you might want to think about adding more pressure if something you have cut hasn't cut as beautifully as you wanted it to, or indeed you might want to add less pressure if the machine is cutting slightly into your mat. And like I said, personally for me, I will sometimes apply more pressure when I know that my blade is starting to get blunt but isn't ready to be thrown out and replaced yet. We now need to load materials and the tools. So nothing is needed in clamp A. I'll show you what that looks like on the machine. We need our fine point blade in clamp B, and then we need to press the load button. Let's do that together on the machine. If you have one of the larger machines, you will have two ports. Port A is where you would put your pens or your drawing stylus, and port B is where you're going to put your fine point blade or any other blades that your machine is compatible with. So B is for blades, A is for accessories. And to close that over, you just need to close your clamp like so. You can also see on your machine that there are some white clips at the side and then some rollers which are going to grip your material or your mat. So we are using the Smart Material Red, and I'm going to position it so that the red vinyl is facing upwards to the machine. The carrier sheet at the back with the grid on it is what's going to be facing down. So I'm going to go underneath those two white clips, and I'm just going to gently hold it while I press the feed button to make sure that my material goes under those rollers. The machine has done all of its checks to make sure that I have the right blade and the right material in there that I said I was going to do on that prepare page. And now you can see this go button flashing at me. So if you press that, it will start to cut your heart. Once it's done, you press the unload button and you can see your design is just about in that top corner. Back on Cricut Design Space, you can see the tick next to the red cut, and it now knows that this is the remaining layer still to cut. So we told it we were cutting on a mat. So just to show you, when I go to browse all materials, it now gives me more options because there are more things that I can cut on a mat using the Cricut Maker 3. So bear in mind, if you have selected a different machine, a lot of these materials will potentially disappear because they're not suitable for your machine. So again, you would just narrow it down to what you're looking for. So in this case, we're still cutting vinyl. And then I am looking for the premium vinyl, and the offcut I'm using is actually a removable mat. So I'll select that one. Again, it's one of my most used, so I've bookmarked it and then click done. I can leave the pressure at default, nothing in clamp A, fine point blade in B, load it when ready. To prepare the mat for cutting, you're going to remove the protective sheet. Now we want to keep this clean, and what we're making is actually going to help us with that process. So put your mat somewhere clean where you know which is the right way up and the right way down. I'm going to slide mine under my machine. And then we've got our tacky mat. I'm going to position my removable vinyl up in that top corner. And then I'm going to use my brayer to just push that down into the mat to make sure that it doesn't move position. This then works the same as the Smart Material did. It goes underneath the two white clips at the side, there and there. I'm just going to gently hold my mat to present it to the machine. So don't let it go and let it flop, because it might just drop down ever so slightly. We need to make sure that we're encouraging it into the machine without pushing it. We don't want to put any pressure on. So just a gentle hold and then press your load button. Once it's slid under, you can let go and let it calibrate to check that everything is as it should be. Once done, press the go button. Once done, unload your mat. Make sure you have a clean surface or a mat underneath. You're then going to flip your mat over and peel the mat away from the vinyl itself rather than the other way round. You then need to make sure that your protective mat or protective layer sits back on top of the mat and is ready for you to use another time. So I'll just slide that under my machine for now. So we have our word Cricut on here and we have our heart on here. I'm going to cut away the excess vinyl that I don't need using my guillotine. So because I want to use this as a smart material in future, I am just cutting it so that I have a straight line to use in future. And then while it's here, I will use that to just cut the heart down. So there's my heart. And then while it's here, I will cut down the word Cricut. And it's just to make sure that I have these offcuts that I can use again for future products. And my children like using all of my offcuts as well. Now let's talk about weeding. We're going to use a weeding tool in order to remove the excess vinyl that we no longer want. So this weeding tool has like a hook on it, or you can have ones that are straight that look a little bit more like a needle. You find one that you prefer to use. This is my tool of choice. And then I'm just going to scoop away in that top corner where I know my design is not going to get ruined. When you pull that away, you'll find that your design should be easy to reveal underneath. When it comes to wording, I'm going to do exactly the same. If I had some letters that had the section in the middle, for example, in the letter P or E or O, I would potentially pull those out first and go from there. But weeding can be a really therapeutic process where you're just removing the excess that you no longer want to reveal the section that you do. Once that is done, you're going to need transfer tape. Cricut actually have 3 different transfer tapes. They've got their standard transfer tape, which comes on a backing sheet. They have a new linerless transfer tape, and they also have a strong grip transfer tape. Now the standard transfer tape looks like this, and it has a grey grid on it. but essentially you are peeling back the carrier sheet and that will reveal a kind of sticky back plastic that you're going to use to transfer your design onto your blank. The strong transfer tape has a purple grid on it, so you can tell that that's the strong one, and the linerless just means that it comes without this back liner, this back carrier sheet. So you would just peel it off the roll like this, and then once you've used it, you can potentially stick that back onto your roll to reuse. Transfer tape can be used a good 10-12 times before it needs to be binned. To transfer your design, you are going to remove the backing from the transfer tape. Keep it safe so that you can put this onto the back of it afterwards. And then you're going to transfer your design. Now, if it's just a simple design, use the grid lines to line up with your baseline, as if you're handwriting on a line, for example. Position that there. And then you're going to turn that over and use your scraper tool to give that a really good massage. So we want our design to be pushed from this carrier sheet onto the transfer tape. If you feel like it is struggling, you can always push from the front as well, but I prefer to push from the back so I know that my design is not going to move. You're then going to carefully peel back this carrier sheet, and if you've pushed it down hard enough, it should stay. Make sure you're paying attention to any dots of eyes or loose bits that you know are in the design. If you feel that some of it is lifting up, you can always just push this back down and scrape again. Or an alternative way to do it is to roll back using your scraper at the same time. That works particularly efficiently when you are using the thinner standard vinyl. Now I've got that part of my design, I'm going to line up my Cricut heart above it. So again, find your center point, whatever you want to do, or you might want it off center. For speed, I'm just going to go here, line that up, push the design onto the transfer tape, and then peel that back. And there you have it. There is your design ready to transfer onto your blank. Now I've created this design so that it can sit on my protective sheet. So every time I take this sheet off and put it somewhere, I know which is the right way up and which is the right, or the wrong way I should say. So I'm just going to apply that, didn't need to be this big. Again, give it a push with your scraper tool and then peel that back. So when peeling it back, I like to kind of roll it back on itself rather than lift up. And if anything were to lift, you can always reposition it and put it back and give it another scrape. Like I said before, save your transfer tape for another transfer, pop it back on its carrier sheet if you're using that design. But there you have it. That is how you would transfer your vinyl onto your blank. If you've got any bubbles, you can use your scraper tool to get those out. There is also something called the wet method that you could use, which we talk about in future workshops. So let's have a quick recap of everything we've learnt in this workshop. The app. You know that the app is called Cricut Design Space. It is free to download from Cricut.com. You just need to create your ID and then get creating. The homepage. We've gone through the main support features, we've learnt how to change your settings, and you know where to get inspiration from. On the canvas, you've learnt how to find and add shapes, images and fonts. Then you learnt how to move those layers, rotate, resize, change the font, change the colour, filter and bookmark any designs that you like. On the Prepare page, you learnt how to change the number of copies, check the settings before you cut and select the correct material for the project. And when it came to making, you also learnt about mats and smart materials. You also know how to cut, weed and transfer a vinyl design. Here are some of our Cricut top tips. C is for Cricut Learn. They are clear, concise and up-to-date video tutorials showing Design Space and different machines and presses. We highly recommend you use those starter videos to get you going. R is for recommended materials. Cricut machines are perfectly calibrated for Cricut materials. If you're using a different brand, do a test cut first. I'd highly recommend a heart shape because you are testing both a curve, an internal point and an external point. I is for inspiration. Use the Design Space homepage for inspiration, the TikTok demos on Cricut UK's TikTok feed on Thursdays at 8:30 p.m. and follow people you love, for example us, on social media. C is for community. We'd love to see you in the Cricut Inspire Facebook group. It's our group where we hope to get you inspired, and we'd love you to share your makes as well to inspire others. You are very welcome to join us on Discord as well to ask questions. U is for use it. It is no use to anybody whilst it is still sat in the box. Get it out, set it up and make that first cut. Your confidence will soar after that. T is for tools. Please make life easier for yourself. Get the right tools for the job. The Cricut toolset is a good investment, but we also love the brayer. What next? Come and join us. Join us in our Facebook group. It's facebook.com/groups/Cricut Inspire. I've just mentioned that the Facebook group is there to inspire you. There are weekly posts and prompts to help you on your way. In terms of asking questions, we have a free Q&A on the first Friday of every month. You are very welcome to join us for free. We would rather answer your questions there so that we can demonstrate anything a lot clearer. You're also very welcome to join our Discord group. The link will be sent via email, but if you want to screenshot it on your phone now, then obviously it's here as well. With regards of letting us see what you're up to, we would absolutely love it if you followed us and tagged us in any of your future makes. I can be found at Cricut Inspire. My name is Zoe. Oriana can be found at Koshi Maker. Both of us love seeing what you're up to. Both of us love to share your progress. You are watching the recording of this workshop. This is only available to those who have paid for the workshop itself. Thank you so much for supporting us, and we hope to see you on another workshop soon.